Today, you're going to learn 7 helpful methods for surviving a chaotic season in church. I myself have been going through a rough couple of months, and I've often found it difficult to navigate through the disorder around me. And so in this video, I'll talk about the steps I've been taking to survive a chaotic season, what works and what doesn't.
Well, hey there, and welcome to Pro Church Tools, the show where in 10 minutes or less, you're going to get a dose of tips and tactics to help your church share the message of Jesus while we navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm your host, Alex Mills, joined as always by the boss man, Brady Shearer.
Alex, I've been going through a tough time the last couple of months.
Okay.
I just moved to a new home, and moving is always hectic. It's a whole brand new place.
Yes.
So many things. Feels like every single day there's somebody in my house. They want my money. They want to do things.
I was at your house for dinner the other night, and there were 4 strange people in your house walking around doing stuff.
And it's nice when someone familiar is there,
Right.
like you. We share some Greek food.
Yeah.
But they're still there. I'm like trying to eat my food.
Yeah, it did feel a little chaotic.
And just this past autumn, my mother passed away. She had been battling cancer for 5 years. We had her a lot longer than the doctors told us we would. But obviously, that's huge. You know, I'm 27, I think, and losing a parent that young, definitely not anticipated. That's been difficult. And a lot of it has been wearing on my mental health. And we all go through seasons like this. Maybe the season is something that's happening personal in your life, or maybe it's just chaotic at church because of a leadership transition, or because you're doing a big push for a new building, or because somebody leaves, or some type of moral failure happens. Like, it can get real chaotic in churches. So we want to talk about 7 methods, 7 steps you can take personally. This is for you as a leader to help get through that. And the first one is you want to recognize the pull towards negativity. Simple carbs are always going to be right around the corner, waiting for you to indulge. For me, that's one of my things that I go towards, whether that be candy or all of the fast food fries. And this is something that you've got to recognize is going to happen. You're going to feel more stressed. You're going to feel more upset. You're going to feel more tired. There's a lot of serotonin running through your veins, and you're going to want to counter that with some good old dopamine.
Yeah.
And so you've got to recognize the pull. That is going to be increased. It's going to be heightened. It's going to be grabbing you more and more and more. And so you've got to recognize that. Just acknowledge that. We'll get to fighting against it in a bit, but recognize it's there.
Well, it could be various kinds of negativity, right? Whether it's just negative internal thoughts, or it's poor habits that you have conquered in the past, you find yourself slipping into. You know, I think about the story of the disciples when they got caught in that nasty storm, and the sea is raging. And they're like, "Oh my God! Like, what are we gonna do?" And they're like so offended that Jesus is sleeping in the midst of this storm, right? Like, what? Like, we're gonna die. Like, this is crazy. Like, we gotta jump ship. And he's like, no, like, it's all good. And right there are other theological implications to that story, but it's like. But he models something because we're all going to go through these storms, right? Life is rarely smooth sailing. But he models something so beautiful in that instance. He's like, yeah, there's going to be storms, but in the midst of it, you know, I can be at peace by not submitting to that pull towards negativity.
And one of the great ways to counteract that is the second step, which is to double down on healthy habits. For me, I have been ensuring that even though there's a lot of chaos around me, I am going to put into place some structure with a more rigid morning routine than normal. So I'm waking up at the exact same time. I'm taking my dog for a walk. I'm making my coffee the exact same way. I am making sure I'm getting in the gym. I'm journaling, and I'm just really doubling down on these habits that I know are helpful for me and are healthy to me, because I need that now more than ever.
Yeah, so like those areas in your life that you can control, you know, that you can take hold of. You're making sure that in these moments that where I'm in control, I'm going to make sure I'm doing something that's healthy for me.
Number 3, adjust your inputs.
Well, you know, we're all reading and listening things, and there are things that we consume that I think in these seasons, sometimes you have to know what to hold on to and sometimes what to let go. And that doesn't mean that you can't pick up some of those things again in the future, but I think, at least for me, in seasons of chaos or shipwreck or stormy seas, I've really had to evaluate, okay, what am I going to choose to put in, whether it's what I'm listening to or what I'm watching or what I'm reading. And so it's like, you know, and on a normal day, if I would watch the game, if I'm going through a tough season, maybe I'm not going to sit down and just watch 3 hours of hockey, but I'm going to spend time, you know, reading something or meditating or listening to something. You know, evaluate your inputs and what you're consuming during that time to set yourself up for success.
Number 4, give yourself grace. I myself am number 1 on the Enneagram.
Also me.
As is Alex, which is the reformer, aka the bad side is the perfectionist. And a season of chaos is especially difficult for me because things that I could usually execute on to a level where I myself am pleased with it, I deem that acceptable, I can't. I'm just not at top condition like I normally would be. And this is upsetting because I'm not getting things done, but my brain, my mental state is like, you have to be a certain way. You must perform to a certain level, otherwise your identity is void. That is the negative talk that I'll hear in my own head. And so I have to fight against this really actively to just give myself grace. Look, you're not at peak condition. You're recovering. It's like an athlete coming back from an injury. You're not quite at 100% yet. It might take a long time, and that's okay. You will figure it out. And this is why, if you're not in a season of chaos right now and you're listening to this, it's so important in your role as a leader at church to invest in your team. One thing that's allowed me to get through this is that I have passed on so many of my responsibilities to my team, my designers, my developers, my content creators, my Alexes of the world, my Jonases of the world, who have been able to step up where I have not been able to. And so if you're listening, watching this, and you're not in a season of chaos, that's great. Get dig your well before you're thirsty.
Right.
Because there will come a period where you're going to need to have your team take on some things that normally you would do. And if you prep that system beforehand, which we fortunately did, it's that much easier.
Yeah. And the only way that we've been able to take on some of these things for us is because you've been able to communicate to us. You've been able to say, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm gonna need your help. And that leads us into the fifth point, which, is like being able to talk freely about where you are.
I made a call to our product team last Thursday. I was in a Starbucks waiting to meet up with one of my friends, and I called them and I was like, look, I know that you've been asking me to do a bunch of things, and I haven't been as responsive as normal. I haven't been as quick to execute on those needs, those items as normal. And here's why. I feel like my mental health is just really suffering right now. It's been, 4 months since mom's been gone. I feel like some things that I didn't notice necessarily within the first month or the first couple of weeks, now it's beginning to wear on me like, oh, this was a constant. It's no longer a constant. And all of the roles that she played in my life are starting to build up. But we had a really honest talk. And our product team, some of my closest friends, we talked through these things and they were like, look, we're going to make sure that we step here, here, and here. And just so you know, don't worry. And they're a little bit older than us. Most of the product team, they're in their early 30s, where a lot of us are in our late 20s. And one of the guys, Eric, was saying, he's like, look, I know it's only 3 to 4 years difference between you and I, but for my own self, the difference between me at 27 versus me at 31 has been remarkable in these ways. And so he was even giving perspective, being a little bit older, saying, hey, I walked through something similar at this time. You're going to get through it. Here's what's helpful. None of that would have happened if I wasn't honest up front and just saying, hey, because you have to show vulnerability. Vulnerability is fine when you talk about something in the past.
Right.
It's a lot tougher when you're saying, look, I expect myself to be this way. I'm injured. I cannot do this. That's not just vulnerability. It's like talking about your own lack.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to be able to be that honest about where you are. And so that's why you need those people, friends and family who you're super close with and you can trust to be able to have those conversations with.
Tip number 6, focus on what you can control. We hit on this earlier. Usually in a chaotic season, a lot's happening beyond your control. That's okay. You've got to accept that. There are things that you can't control. That's okay. Focus on what you can. Invest in healthy habits. Spend more personal time, self-care, whatever it is. And then the final tip, know God is pleased with you.
For us, ones on the Enneagram scale, I think this is very true for us. But I think it's valid for everybody just to rest in that truth, rest in that knowledge, regardless of what else is going on, what you can control, what you can't control, areas that you're letting people down, in all of your own shortcomings, places where you're not operating at your peak. In all of that, in all of the mess, in all of the storm, and all of the failure, you're still loved, no more and no less than you ever have been. And that can't ever change. And just knowing that is a huge step towards being present in your body and being present in that moment to be able to heal through that, right? Be able to navigate that season well, especially as leaders, you as a leader here in this company, but a lot of our audience as leaders in church, we're all going to go through these seasons. And often when we go through them, we're leading people at the same time. People are following us. And so resting in that knowledge that I'm loved no matter where I'm at is going to help us as we lead people, even when we're going through these seasons.
7 steps for surviving and getting through a chaotic season. That'll do it for this episode of Pro Church Tools. We'll see you next time. Didn't hear that? I said thanks for watching. Now subscribe.
Let's get this video to 1 million likes. Peace.